The evening air was cool, carrying with it the faint scent of autumn leaves. The grand hall in Rome buzzed with excitement as people from all corners of the world gathered for what promised to be an unforgettable night. Celebrities, politicians, and religious leaders filled the room, their laughter and conversations blending into a symphony of anticipation. At the center of it all stood Keanu Reeves, the actor known not just for his roles in blockbuster movies, but also for his quiet kindness and humility. He wasn't there to promote a film or make headlines. This was supposed to be a charity event aimed at raising funds for global humanitarian causes. But little did anyone know, this night would go down in history for reasons no one could have predicted. Keanu had been invited to speak at the event because of his reputation as someone who cared deeply about making the world a better place. Over the years, he had quietly donated millions to various charities, often without seeking recognition. His presence alone brought warmth to the gathering, and many attendees looked forward to hearing what he had to say. No one expected him to step onto the stage and reveal something so shocking that it would leave everyone speechless. As he walked up to the podium, adjusting the microphone to his height, the room fell silent. The spotlight shone brightly on him, illuminating his calm face. For a moment he simply stood there, looking out at the sea of faces before him. Then with a deep breath, he began to speak. "Good evening," Keanu said, his voice steady and clear. "Thank you all for being here tonight. This is a special occasion not just because we're coming together to support important causes, but because I've been given an opportunity to share something extraordinary." He paused, letting his words sink in. The audience leaned forward slightly, curiosity sparking in their eyes. What could possibly be so extraordinary? Keanu continued. "Over the past few months, I've had the privilege of meeting someone whose wisdom and compassion have inspired me more than I can put into words. That person is Pope Francis." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Everyone knew Pope Francis. He was a beloved figure around the globe, admired for his humility and dedication to helping those in need. Many assumed Keanu was going to talk about how the Pope's teachings had influenced him, or perhaps share a heartwarming story about their time together. But then Keanu added, "What I'm about to tell you isn't easy to say, and I ask that you listen with open hearts and minds. During my conversations with Pope Francis, he confided in me something unexpected, something that challenges everything we think we know about him." At this point, the room grew eerily quiet. People exchanged glances, unsure of where this was heading. Some leaned closer, hanging on every word, while others sat frozen in their seats. Keanu went on. "Pope Francis revealed to me that long before he became the leader of the Catholic Church, he was involved in something far removed from the spiritual path he walks today. Decades ago, during a time of great political tension and uncertainty, Jorge Mario Bergoglio, now Pope Francis, was part of a covert intelligence operation." The words hit like a thunderclap. Gasps echoed throughout the hall as people tried to process what they were hearing. Some shook their heads in disbelief, convinced it must be some kind of misunderstanding. Others stared wide-eyed, struggling to reconcile the image of the gentle pontiff with the idea of him working in espionage. Keanu didn't stop there. According to Pope Francis, he played a role in missions aimed at preventing conflicts and protecting lives during a very dangerous period in history. It's a chapter of his life that has remained hidden until now. As the weight of Keanu's words settled over the audience, whispers broke out like wildfire. Journalists scribbled furiously in their notebooks, already thinking about the headlines they would write. Social media erupted almost instantly, with videos of Keanu's speech spreading across platforms within minutes. Questions flew thick and fast. Was this real? Could the Pope really have been involved in such activities? And why had he chosen to reveal this now? For Keanu, delivering this message wasn't easy. He knew it would spark controversy and divide opinions. Yet he believed it was important to share the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it might be. "I didn't come here tonight to create chaos or sow doubt," he explained, his tone sincere. "I came here because Pope Francis trusted me with this information, and I believe it's something the world needs to hear. None of us are defined by our past actions alone, We grow, we change, and sometimes we dedicate our lives to making amends for what we've done. His words struck a chord with some, but others weren't convinced. Skeptics argued that the claim sounded too sensational to be true. How could someone as revered as Pope Francis have a secret like this? Critics accused Keanu of fabricating the story for attention, dismissing it as nothing more than a publicity stunt. Supporters, however, defended him, pointing out that Keanu had always been a man of integrity. If he said the Pope had shared this with him, they argued, then it was worth considering. Meanwhile, the Vatican remained silent. There was no immediate response from the Pope or any official representatives. This silence only added fuel to the fire, leaving people to speculate endlessly. Some wondered if the Vatican was scrambling to manage the fallout, while others hoped for clarity. Faithful Catholics wrestled with conflicting emotions. For years, they had looked up to Pope Francis as a beacon of hope and morality. Now faced with the possibility that he had once been part of a shadowy world, they felt confused and betrayed. Yet, amidst the turmoil, there were also voices of reason. These individuals urged patience, reminding everyone that even the most remarkable people have complex histories. As the night wore on, Keanu stepped off the stage, his expression unreadable. Reporters swarmed around him, firing questions left and right, but he declined to comment further. Instead, he slipped away quietly, leaving behind a room buzzing with shock and intrigue. Outside, news vans lined the streets, cameras flashing, as journalists rushed to capture reactions from attendees. Social media timelines lit up with memes, debates, and theories. The hashtag #PopeSecret trended worldwide, drawing millions of views and comments. It seemed impossible to escape the story. It was everywhere. Back inside the hall, discussions continued late into the night. Some attendees praised Keanu for his courage, believing that transparency, even when painful, was necessary for growth. Others condemned him, accusing him of undermining faith and trust. Despite the polarized reactions, one thing was certain. The revelation had ignited a global conversation. People were talking, not just about Pope Francis, but about the nature of redemption, forgiveness, and the complexities of human identity. By the time the event drew to a close, exhaustion hung heavy in the air. Attendees filed out slowly, still processing what they had heard. For many, sleep wouldn't come easily that night. Their minds raced with questions, doubts, and possibilities. Little did they know, this was only the beginning. The days ahead would bring even more surprises, forcing them, and the rest of the world, to confront uncomfortable truths and rethink everything they thought they knew. The morning after Keanu Reeves's shocking announcement, the world woke up to chaos. News outlets around the globe were ablaze with headlines about Pope Francis and his alleged secret past. People couldn't stop talking about it, whether over breakfast, on their way to work, or scrolling through their phones during lunch breaks. The revelation had ignited a firestorm of emotions, dividing opinions and sparking heated debates. Some saw it as proof that even the most respected figures had hidden layers, while others dismissed it as an outrageous fabrication. Regardless of where people stood, one thing was undeniable. Life as they knew it had been shaken. In Vatican City, the atmosphere was tense. Reporters camped outside St. Peter's Square, microphones at the ready, hoping for any sign of clarification from the Pope or his advisors. Tourists who had come to admire the grandeur of the basilica found themselves caught in the middle of a media frenzy. Camera crews jostled for position, shouting questions at anyone wearing clerical robes. Yet inside the walls of the Vatican, there was only silence. No official statement had been issued, leaving the public to speculate wildly. Was the church scrambling to contain the damage? Or was this part of some larger plan? Keanu Reeves, meanwhile, became the center of attention overnight. His phone buzzed nonstop with calls from journalists, talk show hosts, and even friends trying to make sense of what he had revealed. He stayed out of the spotlight, choosing instead to retreat to a quiet corner of his hotel room. Sitting by the window, he stared out at the bustling streets below, lost in thought. He hadn't expected the reaction to be so intense. When Pope Francis first confided in him, Keanu had wrestled with whether or not to share the information. In the end, he decided it was too important to keep hidden. But now, faced with the backlash, he wondered if he had made the right choice. As the hours passed, the story took on a life of its own. Social media platforms were flooded with memes, conspiracy theories, and passionate arguments. Some users praised Keanu for bringing the truth to light, calling him a hero. Others accused him of exploiting religion for personal gain, labeling him a fraud. One viral post showed a side-by-side comparison of Keanu smiling warmly next to the Pope, captioned, "Who do you trust more?" The comment section exploded with replies, each more polarizing than the last. Meanwhile, late-night comedians seized the opportunity to crack jokes about the situation, further fueling the whirlwind of reactions. Amidst the noise, a small group of historians and researchers began digging deeper into Pope Francis's past. They combed through old records, newspaper archives, and declassified documents, searching for any evidence that might support or debunk Keanu's claims. At first, their efforts yielded little. Jorge Mario Bergoglio's early years as a Jesuit priest were well documented, but there was no mention of involvement in intelligence operations. Skeptics pointed to this lack of evidence as proof that the story was false. However, others argued that if such activities had indeed taken place, they would likely have been kept under wraps for decades, buried beneath layers of secrecy. Then came the first major twist. A whistleblower emerged, claiming to possess classified files that corroborated Keanu's account. The mysterious source, who went by the pseudonym Guardian, uploaded a series of encrypted documents online, promising they held the key to unlocking the truth. Within minutes, the internet lit up again. Tech-savvy users worked tirelessly to decrypt the files, while cybersecurity experts warned of potential risks. Could these documents be real, or were they part of an elaborate hoax designed to capitalize on the controversy? Back in Rome, Keanu received a call from an unknown number. Hesitant but curious, he answered. On the other end of the line was a voice speaking in heavily accented English. "Mr. Reeves," the caller said, "you've opened Pandora's box, be careful." Before Keanu could respond, the line went dead. Shaken, he sat staring at his phone, unsure of what to make of the cryptic warning. Was someone trying to intimidate him into staying silent, or was it merely a prankster taking advantage of the hysteria? Either way, the message sent chills down his spine. Meanwhile, protests erupted outside the Vatican. Hundreds of people gathered, holding signs that read everything from "We deserve answers" to "Stand with Pope Francis." Faithful Catholics prayed together, seeking guidance and strength during this turbulent time. Others expressed anger and betrayal, questioning how the man they trusted could have kept such a significant part of his life hidden. Amid the chaos, a young woman named Lucia stepped forward to address the crowd. Her voice trembled as she spoke, but her words carried conviction. "Does it really matter what he did in the past?" she asked. "What matters is what he's doing now. Look at all the good he's brought to the world. Isn't that enough?" Her speech resonated with many, offering a glimmer of hope amidst the turmoil. Slowly, some protesters began nodding in agreement. Others, however, remained unconvinced. A man holding a sign that read "Truth over Trust" shouted back, "How can we follow someone whose past is shrouded in lies?" The exchange highlighted the deep divide gripping society, not just among Catholics but across cultures and beliefs. It was a clash between those who valued transparency above all else and those who believed in forgiveness and redemption. Days turned into weeks, and still, the Vatican refused to comment. This silence only fueled more speculation. Rumors swirled about internal power struggles within the Church, with some suggesting that high-ranking officials were pressuring Pope Francis to step down. Others claimed the Pope himself was considering resigning, overwhelmed by the weight of the scandal. While none of these rumors could be verified, they added another layer of drama to an already explosive situation. Keanu, for his part, tried to stay grounded. He spent hours reflecting on his decision to speak out, replaying the conversation with Pope Francis in his mind. He remembered the look in the Pope's eyes, a mixture of sadness and resolve, as he recounted his experiences. There had been no trace of malice or deception, only a deep desire to unburden himself. Keanu couldn't shake the feeling that sharing this secret was the right thing to do, no matter how messy the aftermath might be. One evening, as he walked through the streets of Rome, Keanu stumbled upon a small chapel tucked away in a quiet alley. Drawn by its serene beauty, he stepped inside. The air was cool and still, filled with the faint scent of incense. Rows of flickering candles cast soft shadows on the stone walls. For a moment, the noise of the outside world faded away, replaced by a profound sense of peace. Keanu knelt before the altar, bowing his head in prayer. He didn't ask for answers or absolution. Instead, he simply gave thanks for the courage to speak the truth, for the resilience of the human spirit, and for the reminder that even in the darkest times, there is always light. As he left the chapel, Keanu felt a renewed sense of purpose. Whatever the future held, he knew he had done his best to honor the trust Pope Francis had placed in him. The road ahead would undoubtedly be challenging, but he was ready to face it, one step at a time. The days following Keanu Reeves' revelation felt like they stretched on forever. The world was still reeling from the bombshell about Pope Francis, and every new development seemed to add another layer of complexity to the unfolding drama. People were glued to their screens, refreshing news websites and scrolling through social media feeds for updates. It was as if the entire planet had been thrust into a real-life mystery, with everyone trying to piece together the truth. In the midst of this chaos, the whistleblower known as Guardian became the focal point of attention. The encrypted documents uploaded online had sparked both intrigue and skepticism. Some tech experts worked tirelessly to decrypt them, while others dismissed them as a hoax. Then, late one night, a breakthrough occurred. A team of cybersecurity specialists managed to crack part of the code, revealing snippets of classified information. These fragments painted a picture that aligned eerily with Keanu's claims. Decades ago, Jorge Mario Bergoglio, now Pope Francis, had indeed been involved in covert operations aimed at preventing wars and brokering peace deals during the height of Cold War tensions. The revelation sent shockwaves around the globe. For those who had doubted Keanu's story, the partial decryption of the files forced them to reconsider. Could it be true? Had Pope Francis risked his life in the shadows to protect innocent people? Supporters argued that this proved the Pope's actions were noble, even heroic, while critics remained cautious, pointing out that the documents could still be forged or taken out of context. The debate raged on, dividing families, friends, and communities. Inside the Vatican, the pressure mounted. High-ranking officials held emergency meetings behind closed doors, grappling with how to respond to the growing crisis. Whispers spread among clerics and staff about internal disagreements over the best course of action. Some urged Pope Francis to address the allegations head-on, believing transparency would restore trust. Others advised caution, fearing that speaking out might do more harm than good. Amidst these conflicting opinions, Pope Francis himself remained calm and composed. Spending long hours in prayer and reflection, those closest to him noticed a quiet determination in his demeanor, a sign that he was preparing for something significant. Outside the Vatican walls, protests continued to grow in size and intensity. In cities across the world, crowds gathered to voice their thoughts on the scandal. Some demonstrations were peaceful, with participants lighting candles and singing hymns in solidarity with Pope Francis. Others turned heated, with angry chants and clashes between opposing sides. One particularly tense protest in Buenos Aires, the Pope's hometown, ended in arrests after a group of demonstrators stormed a cathedral, demanding answers from local church leaders. The incident underscored just how deeply the controversy had divided people, even in places where Pope Francis was once celebrated as a hometown hero. Amid the turmoil, Keanu Reeves found himself caught in the crossfire. While some hailed him as a courageous truth-teller, others vilified him as a reckless provocateur. Death threats began pouring in, forcing him to hire security for his protection. Despite the danger, Keanu refused to back down. He believed firmly that shedding light on uncomfortable truths was essential for growth and understanding. To cope with the stress, he leaned on close friends and family, finding solace in their unwavering support. Late at night, when the weight of the situation felt unbearable, he reminded himself why he had spoken up in the first place, to honor the trust Pope Francis had placed in him. As the weeks passed, a second twist emerged, one that no one saw coming. A former intelligence operative, now retired, came forward claiming to have worked alongside Jorge Mario Bergoglio during the alleged covert missions. The man, whose identity was concealed to protect his safety, provided detailed accounts of their operations. According to him, Bergoglio had played a crucial role in diffusing several high-stakes conflicts, using his diplomatic skills to negotiate truces and prevent bloodshed. What struck many listeners most was the operative's description of Bergoglio's character: humble, compassionate, and deeply committed to protecting human lives. This testimony added yet another dimension to the story, shifting public perception once again. Many who had initially doubted Keanu's claims began to soften their stance, seeing Pope Francis not as a manipulative figure hiding secrets, but as someone who had sacrificed personal comfort for the greater good. Even skeptics admitted that the retired operative's account sounded credible, though they stopped short of fully endorsing it. Meanwhile, supporters of the Pope rallied behind him, organizing rallies and vigils to show their solidarity. Posters featuring images of Pope Francis with the caption "A Man of Peace" appeared in cities worldwide, symbolizing a renewed wave of admiration. Despite the mounting evidence supporting Keanu's story, questions lingered. Why had Pope Francis chosen to reveal this secret now? And why had he entrusted Keanu, of all people, with such sensitive information? Speculation ran rampant, with theories ranging from divine inspiration to strategic timing. Some suggested the Pope wanted to set the record straight before his health declined, ensuring that future generations understood the full scope of his journey. Others believed he saw an opportunity to inspire forgiveness and redemption by showing that even flawed individuals could rise above their pasts. For Keanu, the experience was both humbling and exhausting. He received hundreds of messages daily, from strangers thanking him for his bravery to critics accusing him of ruining lives. One letter, however, stood out among the rest. It was from a young woman named Sophia who wrote to share her story. She explained that she had grown up feeling ashamed of her father, a former soldier who had participated in controversial military operations. After hearing Keanu's speech, she realized that her father's past didn't define him. What mattered was the love and kindness he showed every day. Inspired, she decided to reconnect with him after years of estrangement. Her heartfelt note moved Keanu to tears, reminding him of the ripple effect his words had created. Back in Rome, the Vatican finally broke its silence. Pope Francis addressed the world in a live broadcast, speaking directly to the millions watching. His tone was gentle yet resolute as he acknowledged the swirling rumors and accusations. "My dear brothers and sisters," he began, "I understand your confusion and pain. I owe you an explanation." He went on to confirm parts of Keanu's story, admitting that he had indeed been involved in sensitive diplomatic work during his younger years. However, he emphasized that his motivations had always been rooted in service and compassion. "I made mistakes," he admitted, "but I have spent my life striving to make amends. My faith has guided me and my love for humanity drives me still." The Pope's words resonated deeply with many viewers. Some wept openly, touched by his honesty and vulnerability. Others remained skeptical, questioning whether his admission was enough to rebuild trust. Regardless of individual reactions, one thing was clear: Pope Francis's address marked a turning point in the saga. By stepping forward and taking responsibility, he demonstrated the same humility and courage that had earned him admirers in the first place. As the dust began to settle, Keanu reflected on everything that had transpired. The whirlwind of events had tested his resolve, but it had also reinforced his belief in the power of storytelling. Through sharing difficult truths, he had sparked conversations that transcended borders, cultures, and beliefs. Whether people agreed with him or not, they were talking, and that in itself was progress. One evening, as Keanu strolled along the Tiber River, he paused to watch the sun dip below the horizon. The sky blazed with hues of orange and pink, casting a golden glow over the ancient city. For a moment, the noise of the world faded away, leaving only the gentle lapping of water against the shore. Keanu smiled softly, feeling a sense of peace wash over him. No matter what challenges lay ahead, he knew he had played his part in unraveling a profound mystery, and perhaps in doing so, helped pave the way for healing and understanding. The weeks that followed Pope Francis's live address brought a mix of relief and lingering uncertainty. His admission had been heartfelt, but it also raised new questions. People around the world were divided. Some praised him for his honesty, while others wondered if his words were enough to restore trust. The scandal had shaken the foundations of faith for many, leaving them unsure of what to believe. Yet amidst the chaos, there was a growing sense that this moment could lead to something bigger, a chance to rethink how we view redemption, forgiveness, and the complexities of human nature. Keanu Reeves, who had sparked the entire controversy, found himself at the center of an unexpected movement. People began reaching out to him, not just to criticize or praise him, but to share their own stories of struggle and second chances. A flood of messages poured into his inbox from individuals across the globe. Some wrote about family members they had cut off due to past mistakes. Others spoke of personal regrets they carried like heavy burdens. Each story was unique, yet they all shared a common thread: the desire to be understood and forgiven. One message stood out among the rest. It came from a man named Carlos who lived in a small village in Argentina. In his letter, Carlos revealed that he had once worked as part of the same covert operations Pope Francis had mentioned. According to Carlos, Jorge Mario Bergoglio, now Pope Francis, had saved his life during a dangerous mission decades ago. He didn't have to do it, Carlos wrote, but he risked everything to pull me out of harm's way. That act of kindness changed my life forever. Moved by Carlos's words, Keanu reached out to thank him personally. Their conversation deepened Keanu's understanding of the situation and reinforced his belief that even the most controversial truths could lead to meaningful connections. Meanwhile, the Vatican faced mounting pressure to release more details about Pope Francis's alleged involvement in intelligence work. Historians and journalists continued digging into his past, uncovering fragments of information that painted a clearer picture of his earlier years. Documents surfaced showing that Bergoglio had traveled extensively during the Cold War era, often under mysterious circumstances. While some trips aligned with his official duties as a Jesuit priest, others seemed unaccounted for. These findings fueled speculation that he had indeed played a role in secretive diplomatic missions, though concrete evidence remained elusive. In response to the growing demand for transparency, the Vatican took a bold step. They announced plans to open a limited portion of their archives related to Pope Francis's early life. This decision sent shockwaves through the academic community and beyond. Scholars scrambled to prepare for access to materials that had long been shrouded in secrecy. For many, it felt like a historic opportunity, a chance to separate fact from fiction and shed light on one of the most talked-about scandals in modern history. As preparations for the archive opening moved forward, tensions within the Catholic Church reached a boiling point. Conservative factions accused Pope Francis of tarnishing the institution's reputation, urging him to step down. Progressive voices, on the other hand, rallied behind him, arguing that his willingness to confront his past demonstrated strength and integrity. The internal conflict spilled into public view when several high-ranking cardinals issued conflicting statements about the scandal. Some called for unity and patience, while others demanded immediate answers. The rift underscored just how deeply the controversy had fractured the Church. Amidst the turmoil, Pope Francis remained steadfast. He continued his daily routine, meeting with visitors, leading prayers, and visiting communities in need. His actions spoke louder than any document or rumor. In one particularly poignant moment, he traveled to a refugee camp on the outskirts of Rome, where he spent hours comforting displaced families. Photographs of him embracing children and sharing meals with weary migrants circulated widely, reminding people of the compassion that had made him so beloved in the first place. Critics accused him of staging these acts for publicity, but supporters dismissed such claims, pointing out that his dedication to service predated the scandal. For Keanu, watching Pope Francis persevere despite the backlash was both inspiring and humbling. He admired the pontiff's ability to rise above criticism and focus on helping others. At the same time, Keanu couldn't ignore the toll the situation was taking on those around him. Security measures tightened wherever he went, turning his once peaceful life into a tightly controlled routine. Friends expressed concern for his well-being, urging him to take a break from the spotlight. But Keanu refused to retreat. He believed the conversation he had started was too important to abandon. One evening, Keanu received an invitation that caught him off guard. The Vatican had requested a private meeting with him, a gesture that signaled a shift in their approach. Curious and cautiously optimistic, Keanu accepted. When he arrived at the Apostolic Palace, he was greeted warmly by Pope Francis himself. The two men sat together in a quiet study, surrounded by shelves lined with books and religious artifacts. For nearly an hour, they talked openly about the events that had unfolded since Keanu's initial announcement. Pope Francis expressed gratitude for Keanu's courage in sharing the secret, acknowledging that it had forced him to confront parts of his past he had long kept buried. "You've given me a gift," the Pope said softly. "Not because you revealed my story, but because you reminded me of the importance of truth." Their meeting ended with a shared prayer, a moment of reflection that left both men visibly moved. As Keanu walked away from the palace, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew he wasn't alone. Pope Francis's resilience inspired him to keep pushing forward, even when the path seemed uncertain. Back in the public eye, reactions to the unfolding events varied widely. Social media buzzed with debates, memes, and heartfelt posts. Some users created hashtags like #YouForgiveness Matters and #Truth and Grace, encouraging others to focus on compassion rather than judgment. Others used the platform to voice anger and skepticism, questioning whether the Vatican's partial transparency was merely a tactic to control the narrative. Late-night talk shows joked about the scandal, blending humor with sharp commentary. Comedian Trevor Noah quipped, "Pope Francis is basically the James Bond of the Catholic Church now. I'm just waiting for him to show up in a tuxedo holding a martini." Despite the noise, pockets of hope emerged. Faith-based organizations launched initiatives aimed at fostering dialogue about forgiveness and redemption. Schools incorporated discussions about the scandal into their curriculums, using it as a teaching moment about the complexity of human identity. Even Hollywood took notice, with producers pitching ideas for documentaries and films inspired by the events. The ripple effect of Keanu's revelation extended far beyond its original scope, touching lives in ways no one could have predicted. As the calendar flipped to a new month, anticipation grew for the release of the Vatican archives. Scholars, journalists, and curious citizens alike awaited the opportunity to sift through the documents, hoping to uncover definitive proof of Pope Francis's involvement in covert operations. Speculation ran rampant about what might be found: letters, photographs, or perhaps even audio recordings. Whatever the contents, one thing was certain: the revelations would shape not only the legacy of Pope Francis, but also the future of the Catholic Church itself. For Keanu, the journey had transformed him in profound ways. What had started as a simple act of trust between two men had spiraled into a global phenomenon, forcing millions to confront uncomfortable truths about themselves and others. Through it all, Keanu clung to the belief that honesty, no matter how painful, was worth the cost. As he prepared for the next chapter of this extraordinary saga, he reminded himself of something Pope Francis had said during their private meeting. "The truth may hurt, but it also sets us free." The day finally arrived when the Vatican opened its long-guarded archives. Scholars, journalists, and historians from around the world gathered in Rome, eager to uncover the secrets hidden within. The atmosphere was electric with anticipation. Cameras flashed as people lined up outside the grand hall where the documents were displayed under strict supervision. Security was tight, with guards stationed at every corner and rules strictly enforced. No cameras, no phones, and only a limited number of visitors allowed inside at a time. It was clear that the Vatican wanted to control how this sensitive information was handled. Keanu Reeves joined the crowd, his presence drawing immediate attention. Reporters tried to approach him for comments, but he politely declined, saying he was there to learn, not to speak. As he entered the hall, he felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. Rows of glass cases held faded letters, yellowed photographs, and typed reports stamped with official seals. Each item seemed like a piece of a puzzle waiting to be assembled. Keanu moved slowly, taking in every detail, his mind racing with questions. What would these documents reveal? Would they confirm Pope Francis's involvement in covert operations, or would they raise even more doubts? One document caught Keanu's eye, a handwritten letter dated decades ago. The handwriting was neat and precise, belonging to someone named J.M. Bergoglio. In the letter, Bergoglio described his efforts to negotiate peace between two warring factions during a tense standoff. He wrote about the risks he had taken, the lives he had tried to save, and the moral dilemmas he faced. Reading those words, Keanu felt a lump form in his throat. This wasn't just a record of events, it was a glimpse into the soul of a man who had struggled to do what he believed was right, even when the stakes were impossibly high. As news of the contents began to leak out, reactions poured in from all corners of the globe. Some saw the documents as proof of Pope Francis's heroism, highlighting his courage and selflessness. Others remained skeptical, pointing out gaps in the timeline and missing pieces of evidence. Critics argued that selective transparency was still a form of manipulation, accusing the Vatican of cherry-picking which materials to release. Supporters countered that opening the archives at all was a monumental step toward accountability, something few religious institutions had ever done. Back in Vatican City, Pope Francis watched the unfolding drama with quiet resolve. He knew the documents wouldn't satisfy everyone, but he hoped they would help people see the bigger picture. For him, the past wasn't about glory or shame. It was about lessons learned and lives touched. That evening, he addressed a small group of trusted advisors sharing his thoughts on the situation. "We cannot change history," he said, "but we can choose how we respond to it. My hope is that this moment will inspire us to reflect on our own journeys, the mistakes we've made and the grace we've received." Outside the Vatican walls, protests continued, though their tone had shifted slightly. While some demonstrators still demanded answers, others focused on celebrating Pope Francis's legacy of compassion and service. A young artist named Sophia created a mural near St. Peter's Square, depicting the Pope as a bridge connecting divided worlds. Her work quickly became a symbol of unity, drawing crowds who posed for photos in front of it. Nearby, volunteers handed out flyers promoting forgiveness and understanding, urging people to look beyond the headlines and focus on the values Pope Francis stood for. For Keanu, the experience of exploring the archives left a deep impression. He spent hours poring over the documents, piecing together fragments of Jorge Mario Bergoglio's life before he became Pope Francis. One file contained notes from intelligence operatives praising Bergoglio's diplomatic skills and bravery. Another included testimonials from individuals whose lives had been saved thanks to his interventions. These discoveries painted a complex portrait of a man who had walked a difficult path, balancing faith and duty in ways few could imagine. Despite the mounting evidence supporting Pope Francis's account, skepticism persisted. Conspiracy theories flourished online, with some claiming the documents were fabricated or altered to protect the Church's reputation. Social media platforms buzzed with debates, memes, and heated arguments. Late-night comedians joked about the scandal, turning it into entertainment for millions. Yet amid the noise, there were also voices of reason. Thought leaders and spiritual guides used the opportunity to talk about the importance of forgiveness and redemption, encouraging people to let go of judgment and embrace empathy. Keanu found himself reflecting on these conversations often. He, realized that the scandal had sparked something far greater than controversy. It had ignited a global dialogue about human imperfection and growth. People were talking about things they rarely discussed openly: guilt, regret, and the possibility of second chances. Inspired by this shift, Keanu decided to take action. He partnered with a nonprofit organization to launch a campaign called Truth and Grace, aimed at fostering understanding and compassion. The initiative included storytelling workshops, community events, and online resources designed to help people share their own struggles and find healing. One evening, Keanu attended a gathering hosted by the campaign, held in a cozy theater in downtown Rome. The event featured personal stories from individuals who had overcome adversity. A woman named Maria spoke about forgiving her estranged father after learning about his sacrifices during wartime. A teenager shared how he turned away from crime after being mentored by a local priest. Each story was powerful, reminding everyone present of the resilience of the human spirit. When it was Keanu's turn to speak, he took the stage with humility, sharing his own journey and the lessons he had learned along the way. "We are all imperfect," he said, "but that doesn't mean we're broken. Our flaws make us human, and our choices define who we become." As the weeks passed, the scandal began to fade from the headlines, replaced by other news stories vying for attention. But its impact lingered. Faith-based organizations reported an increase in donations and volunteer sign-ups, attributing the surge to renewed interest in acts of kindness and service. Schools incorporated discussions about forgiveness into their curriculums, using the scandal as a case study in ethics and morality. Even Hollywood took notice, with filmmakers pitching projects inspired by the events. The ripple effect of Keanu's revelation extended far beyond its original scope, touching lives in ways no one could have predicted. For Pope Francis, the aftermath of the scandal reinforced his commitment to serving others. Despite the criticism and scrutiny, he continued his mission with unwavering determination. His daily schedule remained packed with meetings, prayers, and visits to marginalized communities. One particularly moving moment occurred when he met with a group of former intelligence operatives who had worked alongside him decades ago. They shared memories of their missions, laughing and crying as they recalled both triumphs and failures. The reunion served as a reminder that the bonds forged in difficult times often last a lifetime. As the year drew to a close, Keanu reflected on everything that had transpired. What had started as a private conversation between two men had spiraled into a global phenomenon, forcing millions to confront uncomfortable truths about themselves and others. Through it all, Keanu clung to the belief that honesty, no matter how painful, was worth the cost. He remembered something Pope Francis had told him during their private meeting. "The truth may hurt, but it also sets us free." Standing on a hill overlooking Rome, Keanu watched the city lights twinkle against the night sky. The air was cool, carrying with it the faint scent of pine trees. For a moment, the noise of the world faded away, leaving only the sound of his breathing and the distant hum of traffic. Keanu smiled softly, feeling a sense of peace wash over him. No matter what challenges lay ahead, he knew he had played his part in unraveling a profound mystery, and perhaps, in doing so, helped pave the way for healing and understanding. Months had passed since the Vatican opened its archives, and the world slowly began to settle into a new rhythm. The scandal surrounding Pope Francis had lost its grip on the headlines, replaced by fresh news and unfolding events. Yet, the impact of what had been revealed continued to ripple through society, shaping conversations about faith, forgiveness, and humanity's capacity for change. For Keanu Reeves, the experience had transformed him in ways he never imagined. What started as a single act of trust between two men had become a catalyst for global reflection, leaving an indelible mark on millions of lives. Keanu spent much of his time traveling, speaking at events tied to the Truth and Grace campaign he had helped launch. From packed auditoriums in major cities to intimate gatherings in small towns, people came to hear him share his story and the lessons he had learned. His message was simple yet powerful. We are all flawed, but our imperfections do not define us. It is how we respond to our mistakes that truly matters. Audiences listened intently. Many moved to tears as they connected his words to their own struggles and triumphs. One evening, after a particularly emotional event in Buenos Aires, Keanu met a man named Diego. Diego introduced himself as someone who had once worked closely with Jorge Mario Bergoglio during the covert operations decades ago. He thanked Keanu for bringing attention to the Pope's past, explaining that it had given him closure. "I've carried guilt for years," Diego confessed, thinking I was part of something wrong. "But hearing how my work saved lives, it changes everything." Their conversation stayed with Keanu long after they parted ways, reinforcing his belief in the power of truth to heal old wounds. Meanwhile, Pope Francis remained steadfast in his mission, continuing to lead with humility and compassion. The controversy had tested the Catholic Church in ways no one could have foreseen, but it also strengthened the resolve of those who supported him. Faithful Catholics around the world rallied behind the pontiff, seeing him not as a perfect figure but as a relatable human being who had grown from his experiences. Critics still existed, of course, but their voices grew quieter over time. Even some skeptics softened their stance, acknowledging that Pope Francis's actions in the present spoke louder than any secrets from his past. Inside the Vatican, efforts to promote transparency gained momentum. Inspired by the public's response to the archive release, church leaders announced plans to digitize more historical records, making them accessible to researchers and scholars worldwide. This decision marked a significant shift for an institution long criticized for guarding its secrets too tightly. While some traditionalists opposed the move, arguing it risked exposing vulnerabilities, progressive voices celebrated it as a step toward accountability and renewal. Pope Francis himself championed the initiative, saying, "The light of truth can only strengthen our faith." Back in Hollywood, filmmakers and producers raced to adapt the scandal into movies and documentaries. Scripts were written, casting calls went out, and pitches flooded studios. Some projects focused on Keanu's role in uncovering the secret, while others explored Pope Francis's journey from intelligence operative to spiritual leader. Though none of these adaptations had been officially endorsed by either Keanu or the Vatican, they reflected the widespread fascination with the story. Keanu watched the developments with a mix of amusement and concern, hoping the portrayals would honor the complexity of the situation rather than oversimplify it. As the months turned into a year, the Truth and Grace campaign gained traction beyond expectations. Schools adopted its curriculum, teaching students about empathy and resilience. Community centers hosted workshops where people shared their stories of redemption and second chances. Social media platforms buzzed with hashtags like "Forgive and Grow," inspiring countless posts about personal growth and healing. The movement transcended borders, cultures, and beliefs, proving that even in divisive times humanity could find common ground. For Keanu, the success of the campaign brought both pride and perspective. He realized that the scandal had given him a platform unlike anything he'd ever experienced before. Known for his roles in action films and sci-fi blockbusters, he now found himself recognized as a voice for authenticity and kindness. Strangers approached him on the street, not to ask for autographs or selfies, but to thank him for sparking important conversations. These interactions reminded him of why he had chosen to speak out in the first place: to create connections, foster understanding, and inspire positive change. One day, Keanu received an unexpected invitation. The Vatican had asked him to return to Rome to participate in a special ceremony honoring Pope Francis's contributions to peace and reconciliation. Though hesitant at first, worried it might be misinterpreted as self-promotion, he ultimately accepted. When he arrived at the Apostolic Palace, he was greeted warmly by familiar faces, including the Pope himself. The ceremony was modest, yet deeply meaningful, filled with heartfelt speeches and moments of prayer. At one point, Pope Francis stood beside Keanu, placing a hand on his shoulder as he addressed the audience. "This man trusted me enough to share my story," he said, his voice steady and sincere. In doing so, he reminded us all of the importance of honesty and courage. The gesture touched Keanu profoundly, leaving him speechless. As the event concluded, he lingered in the palace courtyard, watching the sun dip below the horizon. Shadows stretched across the cobblestone paths, and the air carried the faint hum of distant chants. For a moment, the weight of everything, the scandal, the backlash, the revelations, felt lighter. Keanu took a deep breath, feeling a sense of peace wash over him. No matter what challenges lay ahead, he knew he had done the right thing. The weeks that followed, Keanu returned to his quiet life, cherishing the simplicity of routine. He spent hours reading, reflecting on the journey he had embarked upon. Books about history, philosophy, and spirituality lined his shelves, each offering new insights into the complexities of human nature. He also reconnected with friends and family, grateful for their unwavering support during turbulent times. Life wasn't perfect, it rarely was, but it felt fuller, richer, and more purposeful. Pope Francis, too, embraced the passage of time with grace. Though the scandal had left scars, it had also deepened his connection to the people he served. He continued visiting war-torn regions, comforting refugees, and advocating for justice and equality. His actions reminded the world that leadership wasn't about perfection. It was about serving others with love and humility. Even critics who had doubted him began to see him in a new light, recognizing the sincerity of his commitment. Years later, when historians looked back on this chapter in history, they saw it, not just as a scandal but as a turning point, a moment when humanity confronted uncomfortable truths and chose to grow from them. The story of Keanu Reeves and Pope Francis became a symbol of hope, reminding people that even the most unexpected alliances could lead to profound change. It wasn't about fame or power. It was about trust, forgiveness, and the enduring strength of the human spirit. As Keanu sat on a park bench one crisp autumn afternoon, watching children play and leaves drift lazily to the ground, he smiled softly. The whirlwind of events had taught him so much, not just about others but about himself. He thought about Pope Francis's words, "The truth may hurt, but it also sets us free." In that moment, surrounded by the beauty of everyday life, Keanu knew those words were true. Whatever the future held, he was ready to face it with an open heart and a willingness to learn. And so, the story came full circle, not with answers to every question, but with a deeper understanding of what it means to be human, imperfect, resilient, and forever capable of growth.